Have you ever felt caught between two worlds, your faith and the modern world around you? Have you ever wondered if it's possible to live as a true Muslim while still engaging in a culture that often celebrates the opposite of what Islam teaches? Many Muslims today wrestle silently with this question, unsure where they belong. What if the real struggle isn't about choosing one world over another? What if it's about learning how to walk in both without losing who you are? There's a question that echoes in the hearts of many Muslims today. Can Islam and modern Western culture truly coexist? It's a question born from tension, from the struggle of living in two different worlds, one that calls you towards submission to Allah and another that calls you towards self-expression above all else. We walk through schools, workplaces, and societies that define success, happiness, and identity through lenses that often contradict what Islam teaches. We are told that to be accepted, we must blend in, and to belong, we must compromise. But here lies the first misunderstanding. Islam was never meant to erase individuality. It was meant to refine it. The faith does not demand that we abandon the world, that we engage with it from a place of consciousness and integrity. The problem is not that Islam cannot coexist with modernity, that modernity often confuses freedom with detachment from values. True progress cannot exist without moral grounding, and true enlightenment cannot shine where the soul is darkened by confusion. Islam, in its essence, is not an obstacle to advancement. It is the guide that gives advancement meaning. When we look at the foundation of Western culture, we see values like freedom, justice, equality, and the pursuit of knowledge. On the surface, these values seem harmonious with Islam. After all, Islam too promotes justice, demands equality, and encourages learning. But where the two diverge is in the source of these values. In modern Western thought, these values are often derived from human reasoning, which changes with time, emotion, and societal pressure. In Islam, these values come from divine revelation, fixed, eternal, and untouched by human bias. So the conflict is not between Islam and the West, but between a worldview anchored in divine truth and one anchored in human preference. The Western world says, you decide what's right for you, but Islam says, Allah knows what is best for you. And when we try to merge these two philosophies without understanding their roots, we end up torn between obedience and desire, between truth and trend. Many young Muslims feel this tension deeply. They want to live authentically in their faith while participating in modern life, but they fear being labeled as outdated or extreme. Yet, what they must realize is that the greatest power of Islam lies not in its conformity, but in its consistency. Muslims' strength comes from walking against the current when the current leads away from Allah. It's important to understand that coexistence does not mean compromise. Coexistence means clarity, knowing who you are, what you believe, and how you represent it in a world that constantly tests your boundaries. Islam teaches us balance. Withdrawal. The Prophet lived in a society full of injustice, idolatry, and moral chaos, yet he did not isolate himself. He engaged, but with purpose. He didn't blend into his environment, he transformed it. That is the model for coexistence, not to adopt every trend, to use wisdom and ethics to elevate the society around us. The challenge for today's Muslims is not to reject the modern world, but to navigate it with the compass of revelation. Technology, education, art, and innovation, these are not threats to Islam. What makes them harmful is when they are stripped of spiritual consciousness. Islam provides the framework to keep advancement aligned with purpose. When a Muslim student studies science, or a professional contributes to society, or a creator shares art, they are not just participating in modern life, they are representing the beauty of a faith that values excellence in all things. But to do that, we must first be firm in our identity, grounded in knowledge and confident in our faith. Ultimately, the question of whether Islam and Western culture can coexist is not answered by politics or philosophy. It's answered by the lives of Muslims themselves. When a believer stands with dignity, works with integrity, and treats others with compassion, that person becomes proof that faith and modernity are not enemies. The real test is not whether Islam fits into the world, but whether we can remain true to Islam while living in it. Coexistence begins when Muslims stop apologizing for their beliefs and start embodying them with grace. The world does not need us to hide our Islam. It needs us to live it so beautifully that even those who disagree are drawn to its light. If Muslims learn to carry their faith with wisdom, courage, and love, they will show that Islam is not a barrier to coexistence. It is the key to it. Because Islam does not seek to erase cultures, it seeks to purify hearts. It does not fight progress, it defines it. And when we understand that We stop living in conflict and start living with purpose, proving that the coexistence of Islam and modern life is not only possible, it is powerful. In a world that constantly preaches progress, freedom, and individuality, many Muslims find themselves caught in an inner storm, torn between two powerful influences, the call of their faith and the pull of modern Western culture. The modern world has taught us to measure worth through material success, physical beauty, and public recognition, while Islam teaches us that true success is measured by the state of our heart and our connection with Allah. The question, can Islam and modern Western culture truly coexist, does not arise from incompatibility between the two, but from confusion within the human heart. When we do not understand the essence of Islam, we start to perceive it as restrictive, as something that limits our potential or separates us from the world's pleasures. But in truth, Islam does not limit, it liberates. It liberates the soul from the shackles of constant comparison, the endless need for validation, and the exhausting pursuit of worldly perfection. The modern culture often tells us to be yourself, yet it simultaneously dictates what that self should look like, what to wear, how to speak, how to think, what to believe. It claims to give us freedom, but in reality, it enslaves us to trends and opinions. Islam, on the other hand, calls us to a different kind of freedom, a freedom that comes from surrender, from finding peace in knowing that our worth is not defined by society, but by the Creator Himself. This is the beauty of coexistence that many fail to see. Islam does not oppose progress, it defines it. It does not reject science, art, or culture. It refines them with ethics and spiritual depth. The tension between Islam and modernity is not a war between two worlds, a war within the self, between the heart that longs for divine peace and the ego that craves worldly applause. True coexistence begins when we learn to live in this world without letting it live within us, when we learn to navigate modern spaces with spiritual consciousness. We prove that a Muslim can be educated, accomplished, and modern without sacrificing faith. Islam gives us the tools to engage with the world without losing ourselves to it. It teaches balance, not isolation, strength, not submission to trends. The Quran does not ask us to reject modern life. It asks us to walk through it with awareness, humility, and moral clarity. In a time when society tells us to chase everything external, Islam calls us inward, to purify the heart, to find peace in remembrance, and to seek purpose beyond the temporary. This coexistence, therefore, is not about blending faith with culture, but about allowing faith to guide culture. When Muslims understand that their identity is rooted in revelation, not in reputation, they become unshakable. They begin to embody a form of coexistence that doesn't dilute their beliefs but magnifies them. The real question then is not whether Islam and modernity can coexist, but whether we as Muslims can hold on to our values amidst the noise of a world that constantly tries to redefine them. And the answer lies in the heart that knows its direction, toward Allah unwavering, even in a world that keeps trying to pull it away. The coexistence between Islam and modern Western culture is not about choosing one over the other. It is about understanding what truly defines progress, freedom, and fulfillment. Many people see Western modernity as a symbol of enlightenment, a path towards self-expression and intellectual freedom. Yet what they fail to notice is the silent emptiness it often carries beneath its surface, the constant chase for recognition, the obsession with material gain, and the endless comparison fostered by social media have left hearts restless. The irony is that while people claim to be free, they are imprisoned by the very world they are trying to please. Islam, in contrast, offers a peace that modern society cannot replicate because it speaks directly to the soul. It recognizes that true success is not about possessing more, about being content with what Allah has given, not about being seen, but about being sincere, not about following trends, but about holding on to truth even when it's unpopular. The Prophet lived in a world of commerce, intellect, and societal change, yet he maintained balance. His example shows us that Islam is not incompatible with advancement. It is the moral compass that keeps progress humane. Modernity without morality creates chaos. Innovation without intention creates destruction. Islam brings meaning to advancement by aligning it with spiritual purpose. It reminds us that every innovation, every discovery, every step forward must serve the betterment of humanity, not its moral decay. When a Muslim lives in a Western context, the challenge is not to isolate themselves from society, but to live within it with integrity, wearing hijab in a world that celebrates exposure, praying in a workplace that values productivity over spirituality, or holding firm to halal when haram is normalized. All these are daily acts of courage. They are not signs of backwardness, but of spiritual clarity. The world will always try to redefine faith as rigid, outdated, or limiting, But it cannot understand is that Islam's guidance is timeless precisely because it addresses the core of human nature, which never changes. The desire for love, belonging, peace, and purpose is universal. The problem is that modernity tries to fulfill these needs through temporary means, through validation, attention, and consumption, while Islam fulfills them through divine connection. To coexist with modernity as a Muslim is not to imitate everything it offers, but to engage with it from a place of faith and consciousness. It means using technology without letting it control your time, participating in society without losing your values, and seeking success without arrogance. A Muslim can be modern without being materialistic, progressive without being detached from principles, and educated without being spiritually empty. The coexistence between Islam and the modern world becomes possible when we stop viewing Islam as an obstacle to success and start seeing it as the source of genuine freedom. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the strength to choose what is right even when it is difficult. Islam gives that strength. And that is what allows a believer to walk confidently in any era, in any society, without losing themselves to it. The relationship between Islam and modern Western culture is one that is both complex and deeply revealing about the human condition. In a world where identity is often defined by trends, possessions, and social acceptance, the Muslim identity becomes a silent act of rebellion, a declaration that not everything valuable must be visible, and not every form of progress must abandon faith. Islam teaches that the essence of a human being is not in how they appear, but in what resides within their heart. Yet, modern culture often reverses this truth, making the external more important than the internal. The obsession with physical beauty, social validation, and material success creates a society where the soul is starved even when the body is indulged. Islam, on the other hand, calls us to balance, to feed the soul with remembrance of Allah as we engage with the world. The Quran reminds us that hearts find peace only in the remembrance of their Creator. And it is this peace that the modern world seeks but cannot find. Western culture has achieved technological brilliance, yet emotional emptiness. It has advanced in medicine, yet many suffer from depression. It has connected people across the globe, yet loneliness has never been more widespread. This shows that advancement without spiritual grounding leads to imbalance. Islam's presence in the modern world serves as a moral compass, a gentle reminder that while the world races toward external achievement, it must not abandon the internal journey toward the divine. To live as a Muslim in modern society is to constantly navigate the space between faith and conformity. It requires awareness, not withdrawal, conviction, not compromise. Islam does not prohibit progress, it redefines it. It teaches that progress is not measured by how far we can travel in this world, but how close we move toward Allah. In the eyes of modernity, success is climbing higher, earning more, and being seen by the world. In the eyes of faith, success is bowing lower, purifying the heart, and being seen by Allah. The two perspectives do not have to be enemies. They can coexist when the believer learns to filter modernity through the lens of faith. For instance, social media can be used for vanity or it can be used for dawah. Wealth can lead to greed or it can become a tool of charity. Knowledge can fuel arrogance, or it can deepen humility. The key lies in intention. Islam is not threatened by technology or modern life. It only warns against the loss of purpose that often comes with them. A Muslim who holds firmly to their principles while engaging with the world represents the balance that Islam calls for. They show that Islam is not a religion confined to mosques or ancient texts, but a living, breathing way of life capable of guiding hearts, even through the noise of modern civilization. To live this way is not always easy. It requires courage to be different, to say no when everyone else says yes, to lower one's gaze when others glorify desire, and to find peace in prayer when the world chases distractions. But it is through this struggle that faith becomes real and alive. Many Muslims today fear that Islam and modernity cannot coexist because they misunderstand both. Modernity, in its truest sense, is about human development and progress. Islam never stood against that. What Islam opposes is not advancement, but arrogance, the belief that humanity can thrive without divine guidance. When people began to replace moral values with personal freedom, the world became advanced yet spiritually bankrupt. The modern human has more comfort, but less contentment, more information, but less understanding, more followers, but fewer genuine connections. Islam, however, provides a framework where freedom and responsibility coexist. It teaches that true freedom is not the absence of limits, but the presence of divine wisdom. A person who follows Allah's commands is not restricted, they are liberated from their lower desires. This is what makes Islam so uniquely timeless. It does not suppress progress, it elevates it by giving it purpose. So when Muslims in the West fear practicing openly, fearing judgment or ridicule, they must remember that Islam's beauty lies not in conformity but in conviction. The believer who walks with sincerity, who lives by moral principles even when it's unpopular, becomes a light in a darkened society. Their existence itself becomes dawah, a message that Islam and modernity can not only coexist but thrive together, so long as the soul remains connected to its creator amidst all the noise of the world. To understand whether Islam and modern Western culture can truly coexist, one must first realize that the essence of Islam is not confined to time or geography. Islam is a complete way of life revealed by the Creator, designed to guide humanity regardless of the era or environment. It offers a framework that balances the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual aspects of human life. Modern Western culture, on the other hand, often separates the spiritual from the worldly, making religion a private affair rather than a guiding principle. This separation has led to moral confusion where right and wrong are defined by societal trends rather than timeless truths. Islam stands as a contrast to this confusion. It reminds humanity that moral principles are not relative to culture, but are grounded in divine revelation. The challenge arises when Muslims internalize the values of a secular world without realizing how subtly it shapes their thinking. They begin to measure their success through the lens of materialism rather than faith, seeking validation from people instead of Allah. Yet, Islam calls its followers to rise above this, to engage with the world but not be enslaved by it, to contribute to society while holding firmly to divine guidance. The beauty of Islam is that it doesn't demand withdrawal from the modern world, it demands wisdom in participation. It asks the believer to purify their intention in every act, to transform education, work, and even innovation into worship when done for the sake of Allah. Modern Western culture often prides itself on freedom and progress, but these ideals have come at a spiritual cost. Freedom has been redefined to mean the absence of limits rather than the presence of purpose. People are told to follow their hearts, yet their hearts are burdened with restlessness and emptiness. The constant pursuit of pleasure and success has created a society that is materially rich but emotionally bankrupt. Islam offers the antidote to this emptiness by redefining freedom, not as doing whatever one desires, but as liberation from the slavery of desires. A person who is enslaved by their passions is not truly free, they are bound by the whims of their ego. The Quran teaches that true peace is found not in self-indulgence, but in self-discipline, not in rebellion against limits, but in surrender to the one who knows what is best for us. This surrender is not weakness, it is strength. It gives the believer clarity in a world of confusion, stability in a time of chaos, and peace amidst the noise of endless desires. The problem is not that Islam cannot coexist with modernity, it is that modernity often fears submission. It wants to create its own truth, its own morality, and its own meaning, but a world detached from divine truth eventually loses itself. Islam's role, therefore, is not to fight modernity, but to heal it, to bring back balance, to remind humanity that technology, science, and freedom can only benefit mankind when guided by ethics and spiritual awareness. For Muslims living in the West, the struggle to maintain faith while adapting to modern life can feel overwhelming. The pressure to fit in, to blend, to be accepted, these are real challenges that test one's identity and conviction. Yet it is in this very struggle that spiritual growth takes place. Allah never promised that holding on to faith in a time of confusion would be easy, but He did promise that it would be worth it. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that a time will come when holding on to faith will be like holding onto a burning coal. And we are witnessing that reality today. Social media, entertainment, and the normalization of sin make it easy to drift away from one's principles. The believer who resists this pull, who chooses modesty over exposure, humility over pride, sincerity over performance, that believer becomes a source of light in a dark world. Their courage becomes a form of silent dawah. They show that one can be educated, modern, and successful without compromising on faith. Islam teaches that the world is temporary, but the soul is eternal. Therefore, the believer does not chase temporary approval, but seeks eternal success. Living in a society that often misunderstands Islam becomes an opportunity, not a barrier, to embody the truth through character, kindness, and resilience. Ultimately, the coexistence of Islam and modern Western culture is not only possible, it is necessary. The world is in desperate need of balance, a moral compass that can guide its advancement toward goodness rather than self-destruction. Islam brings that balance. It harmonizes the pursuit of worldly excellence with spiritual fulfillment. It does not oppose progress, it perfects it by grounding it in morality and compassion. The question is not whether Islam can coexist with modernity, but whether modernity can survive without the guidance Islam offers. History shows that when societies abandon spiritual principles, they collapse under the weight of their own desires. The same can be said of individuals. A heart detached from its creator will wander endlessly, no matter how much it achieves. Islam calls us back to purpose, to peace, to meaning. It reminds us that the greatest progress is not found in reaching the stars, but in purifying the heart. When Muslims live with this consciousness, they become bridges between faith and modernity, not barriers. Their lives testify that true progress is not just about building a better world, but about building a better soul.